Alright, I've been meaning to do this for a while, been promising people I'd do it. I'll give it a whirl and see what happens. So you get an A10M, A20M, A10T, A20T. You have the Geeetech multi-material printers. And you want to set up Cura to run them. Well, I'm going to base this on A10M just because I've got to pick one. But you use the same premise, same steps to create a profile for any of those printers. So first thing you're going to do when you start up Cura, you want to add a printer. You're going to go down, select a custom FFF printer. You can name it what you want. Just name it A10M here and add that. Okay, you got your machine settings. You want to set the bed size. On A10M, A10T, the bed size is 235 by 235, not 220 by 220. And you want to click on the heated bed. Leave all that except for the number of extruders. We'll just put 2 in for this video. And Marlin selected as the G-code flavor. For the extruder, I don't know why Cura defaults to 2.85 millimeters. I think more people use 1.75 than anything else, but whatever. Anyway, that's it. Your machine's set up. That's all you need to do. And obviously, if you have the A10 or A20T, you'd select 3 or more extruders. That's it. That's it. The machine's set up. I like to do is go to the material settings here. Just basically, in order to change the colors of these, you'll see why in another video, why we want these two colors of these little icons to be different. I've already gone ahead and done this, but what you do is select, let's say, a generic PLA and hit the create button. Probably hit it twice. And on this, on my computer here, for some reason I had to close this setting and then come back to it in order for these to exist. Let's just go ahead and do this. I should have done it in the first place. I'll just click on one of them, create. See, nothing's happening. And if I close this, and then I come back, now you see I have a third custom material here. And you do this for 2 or 3, whatever you needed to. But if you get this custom material selected, you can come over here and change the color of that little icon. You see it doesn't show green. I don't know why. Close it. Then you come back over here and you can look at your custom material. Choose one. Now that one's green. You can leave this one yellow, or you can change it to one of the other ones. Yeah, green and red. Close enough. Alright. So the next thing that you need to do for every profile you set up with Cura for the A10M, all these machines, Cura likes to try to be smart. And if you're doing a dual color print, what it's going to do is when Cura senses, okay, this extruder is not going to be used anymore in the print because we know there's no more of that color in the print, it'll try to shut the heater off, the nozzle heater off. And since we only have one heater in our hot ends, it turns off the one we're using and obviously creates a failed print because it's not heating anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in a post-processing script from extensions, post-processing, modify G-code, come down to add a script, and you're looking for search and replace. You click on that. See, I've already got one there, but we'll just do it again. Add a script, search and replace. Over here in the search box, we're going to type M104T0S0. So what you're looking for is the command that tells it to shut off our extruder. And then in replace, you don't really have to type anything. You can just put a semicolon, and it'll replace this line in the G code with a semicolon, so it won't turn that heater off on you. And that's the only time you have to do that. It'll stay with this Cura no matter what profile you use. It'll be there as far as I know. The next thing you're going to want to do is go to Settings, Configure Setting Visibility, and you want to check this box right here that says Check All. This way, over in your sidebar settings, all the settings that are available will show. There will be no more of these, hidden, no more hidden settings. Only the relevant ones will show up when you click on it, but that's okay. There's one of the temperature settings we need that you don't see unless you do this, but this way you get all the settings. Okay, that is it for up here. And we come over here on the little pencil to get our settings here. We're going to start off with a 0.2 millimeter layer height profile. First thing we want to do is go to Profile, and never mind. First thing we want to do is go here. We got 0.2 already set for the layer height. Initial layer height, I always like to use 0.25. I think 3 is a bit much for me. And now that we've changed a setting, I'm gonna start this off. Go back up here to Profile. It says create profile from current settings / override. So we're going to just make a profile with the name we want. Let's just call it something like A10M 0.2 PLA. Obviously, name these profiles whatever their general purpose is. Whether it's you want to create profiles for layer heights, different layer heights, or if you want to create profiles for PLA or ABS, it's really helpful to go ahead and set these as many profiles up as you need to, so you don't have to just keep changing the same one over and over again and forgetting how you set something up for a certain layer height or a certain material type. Okay, then click OK, and then you can close this. So you can see now the profile we're building on is the one we just named A10M.2 PLA. I don't know, it messed something up. Oh, we'll go back and do it again here. 0.2. Initial layer height 0.25. Now line width. It's common misconception that you want your line width to be the same as your nozzle diameter. That's just not the case. You want your line width to be set to somewhere between 1.1 and 1.2 times your nozzle diameter. There's a lot of reasons for this, and I can put links or whatever on this if people want it, but basically Cura is the only slicer I know of that defaults to your nozzle diameter for the line width. S3D uses 0.48, which is 1.2 times a 0.4 nozzle. I believe Slick 3R or Slicer, Prusa Slicer 2, I believe those default to 0.45, which is kind of in the middle between. It's like 1.15 times the nozzle diameter. E3D Slicer, Pathio, 0.48. Anyway, you get the picture. Cura is the only one that does this. I like to use on the A10M. Most generally, I go for 1.1 times the nozzle diameter, which is 0.44 line width. And there's a bunch of them. You can change these for different types of prints, but we won't worry about that right now. That gets a little more advanced. Let's see, shell, wall extruder. Most of the time you want to leave these not overridden. If you're doing a dual color print, you think, well, I want it to print with this extruder. Now, don't change those. No, you need to leave those set. There's probably a good reason for using these in some more advanced prints, but for right now, we don't need to touch these, even though you might think you want to. Wall thickness, let's just leave all this 0.8. Obviously our wall thickness is going to be more like 0.88. So we can just leave this as 2. That's okay. Bottom and top thickness. For most prints, all these defaults are fine. Outer before inner walls. This helps with some really tiny prints, or prints that have not a lot of overhangs, but they have you know, small things, like if you've seen like a deer, if you're printing a deer with a big set of antlers, the antlers would benefit from printing the outside walls before the inside. Less stringing, but again, for now we'll leave that. Wall flow, tiny gaps, print thin walls, all this can stay. Again, there's a lot of settings here that you'll change print to print. Just depends on the situation. Infill, again, don't change the infill extruder. Infill density, obviously set that to what you want. For the print I will be doing in the next video to show you how to use this, we'll be using 15, so I'm going to go ahead and set it now. And here's a good time to do this. Most of these settings you want to be exactly the same for both extruders. So what you do is you right click in this box and copy all changed values to all extruders. Just keep doing that as you go, and then when you go to the other extruder, you'll see that value is set just as it should be. So just keep doing that once in a while, so you don't have to go and flip back and forth between extruders and see what the settings are and make sure they're the same. Let's see, really, I don't change a whole lot of this for most prints. Then we get down to material. Okay, here's the other gotcha with our mixing extruder. There's I believe five temperatures here, and they all need to be set to the same temperature, whatever your preference is for temperature for your particular material. Just make sure you set these 4 the same, and then I'm going to have to skip a lot here to find it. Standby temperature right there. That's our bugger. This is what causes, if you're doing a dual color print and you haven't set these all the same, what happens when you get done with one extruder and you're going to change to the other one, the temperature on the extruder you just used is going to drop to 175. Well, again, we only have one heater, so the main heater is going to drop to 175, and Cura is going to have to pause, sit there, wait for it to heat back up to 200. So this is a really important setting to make sure it's the same as your regular print setting. And again, I'll copy them to all extruders. So let's go back up here a little bit. Bed temperature, obviously. I keep mine at 60 most of the time just because that works. You want to enable retraction. For me, 5 millimeters at 45 millimeters per second, or even 40. Actually, the print I'm going to do, I'm going to want more like 40. And then that's your retraction speed. That's when it pulls the filament back. And the retraction prime speed, that's when it unretracts. And since we have the setting here to do it, if that setting is a little bit slower, I've found that you get less blobs. When the nozzle moves over to the print and wants to start printing again, it unretracts and it shoves a big blob of filament right there. Slowing the retraction prime speed down will help that tremendously. Okay, we got the standby temperature. Again, I'm going to make sure I copy all the values. Okay, nozzle switch retraction distance. This is when you go from one extruder to the other, like you go to the prime tower to switch extruders. That's what this distance is. It needs to be set, you saw that was set to 16 millimeters, which is way too far. You want this set to the same distance as your normal retraction, and the speeds can be the same. I found it works just as well. And that's it for the speeds. Retraction. Print speed. Alright. This gets a little interesting because people always say, well, what speed did you print something at? Oh, I printed at 60 millimeters per second. Well, most slicers, obviously, you're printing some stuff at 60, but you don't want your, for most models, you end up printing some of it at 60, some of it at 30, some at 10. For the thing I'm going to do tomorrow, I kind of know that I'm going to want my print speed to be, total print speed to be 50. That way the infill will be 50, should be okay. The wall speed, outer wall, this is where your quality, if you're doing detail prints, you want your walls to be printed a little slower, a little more carefully, a little more detail. So my outer wall speed on anything that I've got any detail in, I'll do anywhere from 10 to 15 millimeters per second. The one I'm going to do in the next video, we're going to do at 15. The inner wall, there again, it can be printed faster than the outer wall, but not by a whole lot because it'll still have an effect on the quality because it'll show through basically. Top and bottom speeds, 25 millimeters per second is fine. Again, it's going to depend on what model you're doing. Whether you need the top and bottom finishes to be really nice, then you want to go slower. Travel speed, I always go at least 120. My A10M, A10T will all do 150 millimeters per second with no problem, as long as my acceleration for travel is set for 1,000 or less, and the jerk set for 10 or less. I'll get no layer shifting doing this. And there's less chance for stringing. The faster your travel speed is, when you're not printing, the less stringing you'll get because it just won't be as much time for the nozzle to ooze. Excuse me. Alright, initial layer speed. There, it's really the slower first layer. Well, it makes it so it'll stick better to the build plate. If you have adhesion problems, slowing this down can help. And if you want the quality to be decent, if it's not anything special, you can pump these speeds up a little bit and still be okay. But I leave it pretty much at around 25. Number of slower layers. Okay. You can, if you don't want to change the acceleration and jerk settings in your printer, on like from the LCD screen or with G-code, you can do that here with Cura. If you do it here with Cura, your estimated print times will also be much closer because that's one of the things that when Cura calculates that, it bases it on 3,000 millimeters per second jerk acceleration and around 20 jerk. So that's why one of the reasons why the times are so much different. Like I say, I want these around 1,000 for print. And if I'm doing something with some detail, I'll also do something like take the outer wall acceleration and drop that just a little bit. Top and bottom, same again, depends on the quality of what you're doing. Travel acceleration, I can say 1,000 or under, and that'll greatly reduce the chance of having any layer shifting just due to the bed, especially the y-axis. Trying to get up to 150 millimeters per second really fast. That's what's causing most of the layer shifting issues people have. Excuse me. Enable jerk control. There we go. Again, I want this to 10 or less. Travel jerk especially. See, that's at 30. That's good reason why people are getting layer shifting, is these high numbers. Once you get your machine really dialed in, get some good drivers, maybe even change steppers, you can up the jerk a bit because it does actually help in print quality at some points to have it go a little faster. But for right now, basic setup, we want it all pretty low. Travel. Combing mode. I'll let you, you hover your mouse over these, most of it will give you a pretty good description of what it's for. Combing mode, most of the time I leave right there, but sometimes you need to take that off because it causes some issues with nozzle rubbing across parts that are already printed that might be a little over extruded, or you just want it to avoid parts you've printed. So when it comes off the side of the print, like to go to the prime tower or move to another part of the model, it doesn't make stringing quite so bad. Okay. Travel void, that's for up there. Layer start X, layer start Y. You can set these, and it doesn't have to be a perfect location on your bed. This is where your layers are going to generally try to start. Doesn't mean they all will. Let's say you're printing a cube in one back corner, a cube-shaped thing, or maybe a lithophane. I do this with my lithophanes. I'll put the start coordinates somewhere where it's going to end up trying to start on a back corner. This way, if you get a lot of blobs from your start point, it's not showing up on the front of your lithophane. So you could set that to an area close to or beyond where you want your layer start distance. They can be generally anything. You can just use the corners of the bed if you want as the reference. But we don't need that for now. You set your cooling up here. I like to hold off at my fans until I am done with all the bottom layers, or maybe working on the last layer. If it's a four bottom layers, I might set it this for 4, and that way because you don't need the fan if you're just doing bottom layers. Until you start getting overhang and like that, you don't really need it to be on. So that's regular fan speed it's going to come up to at layer 4. Okay, lift head, no, we don't want that. Support, not going to go into supports. I don't use them that much. I gotta admit, I tend to avoid models that I need a lot of supports for, just because I don't want to. Let's see. Build plate adhesion. Really depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a lithophane, something like that needs a nice big brim, then obviously you set that here to whatever you think you need. I use a brim a lot of times when I don't even need to. I just sort of use it as like a prime line or a skirt. You could do the same thing. A lot of people just use a skirt, which just means it's going to do a general outline around the model and extrude some material so the nozzle's all primed and ready to go by the time it moves over and starts the print. So most things I put a brim on. It doesn't take much to clean them off. I don't know why. I'll even do it on a calibration cube, and it's totally unnecessary. So do what you want with that. Dual extrusion. Alright. I think I might just make another short video right after this one to deal with the dual extrusion, just to make these things not so long and monotonous and boring. But let's just go ahead and set this up anyway. You're doing 2-color print and you want nice sharp lines, or you need to purge out the old material. You're going from green to red. When you go to switch, you need to go to the prime tower and start putting red filament through. The calculations for this can be just hit or miss. Okay, you see 2 important settings: prime tower size and prime tower minimum volume. Okay, the misconception here is that the bigger you make the tower, the more material gets purged. That is not the case with Cura. The setting that says how much material is going to get purged each time is here, the minimum volume. Now you can see this is set for 6 cubic millimeters, which is virtually nothing. For our hot ends, they hold a lot of material. There's 40 cubic millimeters in the A10M hot end between where the filaments meet and the tip of the nozzle. 40 cubic millimeters of material, and that's the minimum amount you need to purge out. If you are doing some really dark colors and the purge really doesn't matter that much, but it does a little, then you can cut down this number and still be okay. But if you're doing red to white or black to white or those colors to any other lighter color, you need to purge a lot when you move to the other color. The ones I'm going to be using next, I'm going to just set them the same. I know this works well at 60 millimeters cubed. The trick with this is now you have to set the prime tower size large enough so that when you go to preview, after you slice and preview, you'll see your prime tower. You want a very small, at least a small hole in the middle of that tower. This is how we know that the tower is big enough to handle all the purge we've asked it to do. In all the things Cura tries to be smart with, this simple calculation, I guess they didn't bother with. Because it would be very easy. I'm pretty sure I remember that 30 works well. I'm going to set it to that now. For now, for two extruders, I think 30 actually, my mind wants to tell me it's 32. So I'm going to set it there and leave it. I'm going to do another short video after this, maybe, to explain that. Or if I jump right into the setting up a two-color print, we'll go back and revisit the prime tower, make sure that it's set the way we want it, because we also want to position it totally different from where it's default. This depends on our model. So we'll get back into that in part 2 of this whatever it is. Okay, prime tower brim. Most likely you're going to want this. A lot of people have trouble with blobs of extra filament on the prime towers. The way Cura builds the prime towers is silly. So your nozzle can catch on the prime tower and knock it over, so you might want a brim there just to help hold it down. Let's see, I don't think there's anything in mesh fixes. Let's see, union overlapping volumes, we want that on. All the rest of this for most prints can stay the same. We won't need to change them for our purposes here today. Special modes, when you're looking to do vase mode in Cura, it's called spiralize outer contour. It just means you're going to print one single line width, one path around your object, and that's it. Single wall. It's handy for vases that are just decorative and not necessarily meant to hold water. You can make them hold water, but I use mine that I do this way mostly just for decorative. They'll hold, you put a couple of pebbles in the bottom because they're not very heavy. Put a couple of pebbles in the bottom, they'll hold up like a little dried flower arrangement just fine, where you don't have to worry about water. Anyway, let's not get off track too much here. Let's see, experimental. Coasting does come in handy with our hot ends because the extra pressure built up in there because it's such a large hot end. I think I will leave this one for another short video as well, because that takes some explanation because of the way it's set up. Alright, well, that's it. Those are pretty much basic settings for 0.2 millimeter layer height with the stock A10M, A20M, A10T, A20T. We want to make sure we update the profile with the current settings and overrides. So we've gone ahead and saved this profile. You see all our little revert arrows are gone. And I believe that does it for this little short video. The next one, we'll see if we can set up a two-color print and go into some of the more some of the details of that prime tower. Possibly we'll be able to see how that works. That's it for this one. Hope that helps you get set up. You don't have to go through all kinds of hoops looking for printer profiles like the JSON files. They really don't do that much magic. They do pretty much everything we did back here in printer settings. All this machine setup, that's pretty much what the JSON files do. So use them if you want, but I find it just as easy to just start right off this way. We've done everything we need to do. We could load a print in here and print it with the settings we just made, and I'm pretty sure it would come out just fine. Alright, hope this helps you out a bit. All my extra rambling isn't too boring. We'll see you on the next episode.